Welcome back to Not So Grand Garage. Tonight we're out in the driveway and I'm going to work on setting up this drum for our PA Biodiesel 55 gallon per hour centrifuge. So yeah, let's get started. So here we have laid out the main components of the PA Biodiesel 55 gallon per hour kit. Now, not seen here is the pump, the motor, and the band heater for the drum. That's okay. So you've got what comes with their big package. So basically a bolt and go type of deal. All you need to supply is the drum when you get their full package. The giveaway I'm going to be doing is going to be coming with this unit here and this unit here. So all this other stuff you'll have to source for yourself, which really isn't a big deal, and I'll show you how to do that pretty cheaply. But anyways, let's go back into this here. So obviously we've got the 55 GPH unit itself. We've got this manifold where this is your pressure. This is how you set your running pressure. So pressure comes from the pump in through here. This here is a mechanical bypass. Basically, if once this is set properly, if pressure ever goes over 100 psi, this opens up and saves your centrifuge from damage. This here allows you to set pressure by bypassing oil around the centrifuge. And then this here feeds into this port on the fuse itself. So got a pressure gauge here, ball valve, pressure relief valve, pretty simple stuff. The hydraulic hose, which will supply oil from the pump. Got the bushing kit for drilling a hole near the bottom of the drum. This will be for the supply, and this here is for the output on the pump itself. Got a thermometer as well to keep track of the oil temperature. Want to keep it over 170. I believe is what they spec. I would probably try and run it close to 200. But yeah, also another thing you'd want to do is insulate this drum to hold that heat in. I won't be doing that in this case because I'm throwing this together just to test run it and abuse it for you guys and see how it works and then give this thing away. So yeah, I won't go through the hassle of doing all that, but I will go through showing how to put these bungs in and everything else. Now I've got a closed top drum on. The only drum I've got is closed top right now. So in order to get these in, I'm going to cut a hole in the top of this drum so I can come down here and put a hole through the side, and then I'm able to fish the components of this down through the side of the drum so we can have it seal up. So I've cut an excess in the top of my drum, so I'll be able to reach down and get to the back side of this so I can actually snug this up and keep it from leaking. I've taken the gasket off to match it up as close as I can with a hole saw that I've got handy. You want it open through there in the center, but you don't want it to be bigger on the outside so it can seal. Obviously this isn't perfect. If this was going to be a long-term setup, I would probably go to the trouble of drilling holes and welding bungs into the drum, or making sure I have an exact size hole saw so these are less likely to leak. But it's a very temporary setup, so I'm not worried about it. I will be using some black RTV on this as well when I put it together. But yeah, so like I said, I've got this hole cut. Another thing I want to warn you about: if the drum you're working with has contained any kind of oil or something like that, oil is combustible, obviously, otherwise we wouldn't be doing this. So be careful when you go cutting holes or welding on these barrels, because if you ignite what's left in the drum, this is a pressure vessel, it can get sketchy really quickly, so be careful. Anyways, yeah, and as you can tell, see, I've got oil down at the bottom of this still. And yeah, if that would have ignited while I was cutting that hole, it could have gotten interesting. So just be careful. But now I'm gonna flip this drum over on this side, so I want it close to my access. I'm gonna come down here a few inches off the bottom, so I've got some settling room for sludge and crap down at the bottom, and go on and drill my hole for the main supply bung. So I've got my hole drilled in the drum. I'm going to take this and I'm going to run it inside the drum facing out. And how I'm going to get it down in there is with this piece of wire here. I'm going to run it through this hole and fish it out the top side. You may be wondering what that's going to do, but I'll show you here in just a minute if I can find where my piece of wire went without cutting my arm open. So, got a piece of wire going out that hole, out the hole up here. Now, what I will do is slide this over this wire and let the wire fish it all the way down to the bottom. Now we've got our bulkhead fitting good and tight. Good amount of RTV squeezing out from around here, so I'm gonna go on and just make sure we are sealing up all the way around the edge. Just like so. And we should be good. Now we've got our second bulkhead fitting done just like the bottom. All sealed up, ready to go, got it tight. So this one is going to be for our thermometer. And on the threads on this, I'm gonna use a little gasoil, or however you want to pronounce that. This is the only thread sealant I'll use when it comes to anything oil or fuel related. This stuff works great. Never had it leak, and it's relatively cheap. So that's what I use. Anyways, I'll put a little on the threads on this and thread it in. Okay, now we've got our supply for our pump and our thermometer installed. We are ready to mount the centrifuge and get it plumbed up. So this is essentially how I'm going to mount this unit, or the position of this unit on top of this drum, because this will make it easier to tighten this up. So I'm going to take this top off of here. As you'll see on the bottom, that is our oil pass-through. So I need to hole saw a hole in the top of this drum for this size here. And then what I did on my last unit, I just used some self-tapping screws and shot 4 of them in it straight down to the top of the drum. And there we have it. I just put 2 bolts in, like I said, temporary setup, clear drain out of the bottom, and it's good and solid, so no issues there. So on these rotors, there's 2 little arrows. So you can see one on the bottom, one on the cap. Those arrows need to be lined up. It's for balance purpose. And then our lid goes back on. Just like so. So this is just about ready to run. I'll have to run this bypass hose. I'm going to run it right down into here, and same for this relief hose. I'm going to dump it right into here as well. Okay, everything is set up and plumbed, other than the pump itself and the band heater for going around the drum. So I'm gonna slide this in the shop and let it sit up overnight, let all this sealant have time to cure, and then come tomorrow evening we will button this up and see how it does. Well, we've got our drum sit out in the shed. We got the band heater on, and all we got left to do is hook up the pump. We've got the pump all set up. Here's the output side, the inlet side. I got the drive all set up here and got it wired up according to the diagram right here. Okay, we are all hooked up. We've got our supply coming off the bottom of the drum, runs over into the supply of the pump. Then our high pressure oil comes out up this hydraulic hose and feeds into this manifold right here. Now we've got our pressure relief, we've got our pressure regulator, our pressure gauge, and then the centrifuge itself. I'm gonna open this up and show you how this works. Now oil is fed in to the bottom here, which flows up this stem pipe and out into your rotor. As this rotor fills up, it has two small nozzles or jets on the bottom. And once this rotor is pressurized, the jets force this rotor to spin, and your clean oil is coming out of those jets, drains back into the top of the drum. Very simple. Now, of course, you got your pressure regulator here, which you would always start with it wide open. And then to increase your pressure on the gauge, you slowly close this until you reach your operating pressure, which when I was running mine, I would typically run it around 90, 95 PSI, something like that. And to note, I've never heated oil with one of these. I used to just thin it with gasoline and not heat it at all. And it worked great for us doing it that way, but we're gonna do it how they've got it set up, how they sent it to us. We're going to heat straight oil. We're not gonna mix gasoline with it. And we're gonna heat it up to between 170 and 200 degrees and go from there. But yeah, as of right now, we're all set up. And as you can tell, this is a very neat little package. It's small, compact. This would work great in a small space. I used it in a little shed just like this, except it was quite a bit smaller, a little bit more cramped, and it worked great. Yeah, what I would say, like I said, if I was doing this permanently, I would get a drum that the lid comes off, the type that's held on with a band. That way you can set all this stuff up permanently to the lid, and it's all removable real easy. It's all easy to get to. You can get down in the drum easier if you need to. But yeah, simple, clean setup. This kit's really complete. I like what they've done. One of the major changes that they have done to this kit I thought I would mention is this pressure bypass setup. Before, they didn't have that. So you were reliant on that ball valve to do everything. And if that ball valve were to ever plug, you would have full pressure from the pump, whatever the pump can produce, going into that centrifuge. And once it gets over 100 PSI or so, you start risking swelling the rotor, blowing the seals out of it, so on and so forth. My last setup, I ran a power steering pump to power my centrifuge, and it worked really well. The only issue there is power steering pumps are essentially a hydraulic pump. They're capable of producing 1200, 1500 PSI really quickly. So any kind of issue with the bypass would turn that thing into shrapnel. So yeah, you don't want to do that. I ran electronic switches on mine. You can see that in some of my early videos. If it would ever go over 100 PSI, it shut the whole system down, shut the motor off. If it ever dropped below 80 PSI or something like that, say a leak came up in the pressure line, it would shut the whole setup off too. But yeah, that's pretty well it as far as setting it up. Very straightforward, clean little package. Like I said, I really like this setup. Well, that pretty well covers it for setting this 55 gallon per hour centrifuge up. This kit from PA Biodiesel is really complete. I really like how it's set up. It's a neat little package. Everything fits real nice. Everything goes together real easy. All in, if I wasn't messing with the camera and trying to explain things, I could have had this whole thing set up in probably 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes tops, and been ready to roll. But like I said, obviously, if I was setting this up permanent, I would do some things different. I would definitely insulate the drum. I would use a different style drum, but hey, this is what I've got, so this is what we're gonna work with. But here is the plan. My last batch of oil I just ran through my single pass came from that tote in the back corner. As you can see, we're down a good bit on level. That tote was full. So I have not cleaned that centrifuge out yet. So I'm going to clean out my cup. I'm going to pull the bowl completely out of the centrifuge and completely clean it out. And get a measurement on how much material we removed. And weight wise, see how much weight we removed as far as sludge and everything goes. Now I'm going to fill this drum from that same tote. That tote's been sitting for over a year, and I'm pulling from the top down. So I'm going to fill this drum up from that tote, and I'm going to run this at least 20 hours. That's quite a bit longer than PA Biodiesel specs. I used to run mine for 40 in a loop. So I'm going to run it for 20, and I'm going to do a full batch. After that point, we'll pull the centrifuge apart, and we'll get an idea how much sludge it removed. Now, like I said before, I've never heated oil and used one of these units, and heat does a lot of good as far as drawing moisture out and everything else. So we'll see how that works out. And then after I've ran this batch, I'm going to pump this oil up into my drum up top and run it through the single pass and see how much more material we can pull out of the oil that went through the pressure driven unit. With that said, I am also going to be doing a comparison, comparing the 3200 RPM setup to the new 6000 RPM variable frequency drive setup they just sent me. So we're going to do some back-to-back comparisons on that as well. And with each batch, I'm going to run this batch here, and I'm going to send a sample off directly out of this drum before we send it up to the single pass unit. I'm going to keep that sample, and then I'm going to, I've got a little bit in here. I'm going to pull from this, which is my last batch, for a 3200 RPM sample, and then I'm going to sample another straight batch from that tank on the 6000 RPM unit. I'm going to get all three samples together and send them off to Blackstone, and we will see what they say. Now that usually takes a month plus to get stuff back, usually when sending one sample, so sending multiple may take longer. We'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, that will take time. But anyways, I think we're pretty well good to go here. This weekend is when I plan on running the batch on this and starting the video for what I think of this unit. So far, I'm really pleased with how they've got this set up. I will say that this pressure regulator here does need to be adjusted up. It's a 75 psi from the factory, and it is adjustable by turning this knob. To get it up to 100 psi, you turn it clockwise one full rotation, and that should bring it up to 100. That's about where you want it to release at, so you can set that where you need it if you purchase this whole kit. Now, the one that I will be giving away will be preset because it's going to be used. But we're only using it once, so hey, it is what it is. So, yeah. With that said, I'm looking forward to seeing how well this unit works. See if we notice any differences between how I used to do it versus heating and everything else running their whole package deal. And doing some comparisons. So, anyways, I will include all the details on how to get signed up for this giveaway in the next video. In the next oil video, which should drop either I'm gonna say this video here will probably drop Friday morning, so it will probably be a week out from that, either Friday or Saturday of the following week. And then we're gonna have I'll go over all the details on how to enter, and I'll make it as fair and as straightforward as possible. It should be simple. Like I said, you won't have to be a subscriber or anything, although I would appreciate it if you would subscribe, because it just helps me out. But yeah, so now that I'm drenched again, it's 100 degrees out here, I'm gonna wrap this up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. If you've got any comments, questions, anything, to ask about the setup of this unit or anything about my previous experience running one of these units, feel free to drop it in the comments section below. And yeah, we appreciate you watching.